Welcome to the Technogals podcast, a podcast where we talk about technology and anything else that is top of mind. Let's get started. Guys, you can do the finger guns too. Alicia sometimes does it, and then
Yeah,
sometimes
sometimes I don't understand it, so then I just abstain.
you don't understand it.
Yeah, like why am I mean, it's finger guns.
It's fun. I want to do finger guns.
Yes. All right, someone else that appreciates the finger guns. Okay, so today's really awesome. We have a guest, Heidi Buck. Thank you for joining us. And we are going to be talking about cognitive load and also just Heidi's journey through tech. So thank you so much for joining us today. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, the best way to support the Technogals podcast is to like or follow us on social media, whether that's LinkedIn or where you watch your podcast on Spotify or YouTube. We really appreciate all the support and feedback. So with that, Heidi, do you want to just take a second to just kind of introduce yourself, and then we'll jump in?
Do you want my career history introduction or just?
I want whatever you think is meaningful. Career, who you are, where you're from. Give it all to us.
Oh, well, I'm just going to start long. No, so let's see. Heidi Buck. I live in San Diego. Have a husband and a 5-year-old girl. She just turned 5. It's very important to note that she's not 5.5, because that half is important. She has perfect ringlets. She looks like Shirley Temple. It's amazing. Like, I don't know how that happened. Perfect ringlets. She's adorable. I work at AWS. I've worked at AWS now for 2 years, which is amazing. I'm coming up on my 2 years anniversary. It went by fast. It doesn't even feel like it. And then my 20 years prior, my previous career was 20 years long. I was a Navy civilian. So I was a civilian working for the Navy here in San Diego in a Navy research lab, running innovation programs. And prior to that, I was in college. So I graduated at UC San Diego with both a bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering and then a master's in electrical and computer engineering. And my master's focus was on computer vision. So that's kind of where I got my start, was with computer vision, a little bit of machine learning. It's like back in the day, just computer vision. It wasn't all this machine learning stuff. And then for the Navy for 20 years, I ran computer vision programs, things like detecting targets on the ocean surface from satellite imagery, from UAVs, from drones, detecting, tracking, IDing those targets on the ocean surface. And then the second half of that 20 years, I was running a virtual reality, augmented reality lab for the Navy. So we were building AR, VR, and immersive tech software systems for the Navy. I think like training, like obviously DoD personnel have to go through a lot of training. So having a VR version of a certain training is a lot more cost effective or safe, or you can get more people through than having the real version of it. And so from there, I got hired into AWS to run a spatial computing team, which is essentially AR, VR, and 3D and visualization. So I was hired for that prior experience, running prototyping teams that are related to spatial computing. And that's what I do now. I run a prototyping team.
That is so awesome.
I feel like Heidi might be guiltier of acronyms, more guilty of acronyms than Tracy and I.
Well, I tell you, yeah, we have a lot of acronyms in the DoD, but I come here and there's a lot of acronyms here too. But I find myself, like, there's a lot of really efficient acronyms in the DoD that I really want to use here, and I stop myself from using it. So for example, like, have you ever written an email and you're like, I already sent you that information in a previous email, or I'll follow up with you in another email with that information. We call it SEPCOR, separate correspondence. And it's like, that is so efficient. And so many times I'll send it to you and be like, SEPCOR. And I'm like, stop. People don't know what SEPCOR is. And then another one that came up the other day was DINK. So It can be any number of things, DNC or DINQ, but it's essentially you have a DINK list, and the people who haven't completed their training are on the DINK list, so did not complete or delinquent.
Oh,
See,
Yeah.
I know DINK to be DINK, dual income, no kids.
oh
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, said that one before too.
DINK list.
Yeah.
And well, there's like lots of acronyms, but gosh, at AWS we have crazy acronyms too. And like just the other day, I had to go to the acronym list and look up one because I'm like, I have no clue what this acronym is. I don't even remember what it was.
What's the official acronym for, well, not the acronym meaning for PACE, the team that you're.
Prototyping and cloud engineering.
Okay.
So that's the so PACE is the prototyping group that I'm part of. And then my group, I have 6 prototyping architects who are mostly spatial computing backgrounds. I knew a lot of them from my prior career,
Yeah.
where I ran into them at events in my prior career.
Very interesting.
My group is brand new. We all got hired at the same time.
Yeah, someone on your team is here in the Wichita area.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I love Wichita. Any chance I have to go back there.
Well, there's a lot to do here, so come back anytime.
I love Wichita because it means I get to visit Tracy.
Aww.
But
So
that's about all I know about Wichita.
we are, fun fact, air capital of the world.
Oh, I know.
Claim
And
to
then
fame.
the cool museum in Hutchinson.
The salt mine.
No,
Wait.
the Smithsonian Space Museum.
Yeah, that one's really cool too.
Yes.
We used to go to field trips there when I was younger. That was like the thing. That was the big thing
That is
that we
big.
got to do. And it never got old. So, okay, so you were a Navy civilian working for the Navy for almost 20 years. Then you joined AWS. Like, how can you talk a little bit just about how you got interested in technology and what kind of started you down that path?
So, and you have to make the decision right when you go into college, right? Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to major in? And so I always knew it would be something technical. My dad's an engineer. I always knew it would be something technical because that's what I was good at. And then when I joined college, I originally wanted to do physics. So I had briefly signed up to be a physics major. And then I met a whole bunch of physicists and I was like, I don't think I want to do that anymore. Super duper smart. And they were very theoretical, and it wasn't that theoretical. It was a little bit more practical. And UCSD is a very theoretical school. They train people to get PhDs and become researchers and teachers. And I was like, no, I don't think that's for me. So then I went into engineering physics. But then I only did that for a brief moment because I've suddenly realized I don't like hands-on engineering. I don't like hands-on work. Like, with my hands. It's a thing. And I was in some lab classes and I was like, I realized people don't like lab classes. I like more the math side of things. And so I looked at all of the labs I'd have to take for engineering physics. And then I looked at all the labs I'd have to take for some other, I chose what's called comms theory and underneath engineering. And comms theory had the fewest labs. Engineering physics had the most. And so I switched over to comms theory. And so did my undergrad in comms and then my graduate work in computer vision. So I've always known I was going to do something technical. It took me a while to realize I hate hands-on stuff like programming and math. So like applied, not super theoretical, not super.
Yeah,
So
you like building at the keyboard.
At the keyboard. I also like managing people who build. Because then, I still get involved, but I don't necessarily have to. We were talking earlier about the AWS Builder Studio. That's very physical, hands-on space. Mm-hmm. We built a lot of physical demos for that space. AWS Builder Studio is in New York City, and Manhattan in one of the Amazon buildings on Fifth Avenue. It was a very cool location. So it's very hands-on, but I enjoyed like sourcing the demos and providing input to what I think the demo should be, but other people built it because I'm just not a hands-on type of person.
So you kind of bring up an interesting part, though, is that it's such a huge world. Even if you pick something technical or if you pick engineering, it's such a broad spectrum of where you can find your niche of like what you want to focus on. So like what would be like maybe your, you've been in this field for 20 years plus. What would you're looking back, your 3 pro tips to anyone wanting to get into the space? What would that look like to help them figure out where their niche might be?
Well, I'd say, start early. I was lucky that I was doing science fairs in high school, and I did the different mentoring STEM type programs in high school. Gosh, it always helps to have a mentor and to start early, going out and doing all sorts of little things, working for different companies or working on different projects. And I guess the other thing is don't be too afraid in college to switch your plan, because I had to do it a couple of times. Never did I did it super early, so it didn't really impact anything. But now that I'm out and I've had 20 years of career experience, I realized probably what I should have done is gone into computer programming, because that's what I like, and that's the type of people I manage. I probably should have gone that route, but it all worked out in the end. Made the same. I'm so happy to be at AWS, right? I love it here. So like 20 years later, I'm in the right spot. I just maybe took a slight circuitous route to get there. It's okay.
It's so interesting though, because we talk about this. I mean, this has probably come up on almost every single one of our podcasts that we've highlighted, is that people think their career is going to look like this like linear progression, and it's going to just like keep, it's going to make sense, or the path makes sense. But the reality is you swerve and then you swerve back around, and like you find like a side project, like, okay, now I want to go that way. And it's a bunch of little random diversions and pivots that end up making up your career. But if you think about it, you're like, oh, when we're back in college or you're exiting high school, you think it's just going to look like this. It's like a straight line, but it's, I think, almost never a straight line. And you also mentioned one of your pro tips being that you should, find projects, or we've also talked about the power of like the side project and the side hustle, and about how that can reveal where your career really should go, or like those passions that you didn't realize existed. So it's also interesting that you did some of those back in your younger days that kind of revealed to you what direction you maybe should go.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the side projects bit. I like that a lot, because coming to AWS, I never thought ever that my boss would ask me to go to New York City from San Diego and design and build what we call the builder studio, this demo space. Never thought I would be doing that. And so I'm so glad that I've signed up for these little side projects along the way, both in my Navy career and now 2 years at AWS. It's the side projects, that really make you figure out, so I really like this topic.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I really want to stay away from that. That is no fun.
No bueno.
So how did you get exposure to computer vision? Because I would assume 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it wasn't as prevalent, or it's probably a super cutting edge technology. What made you decide, like, okay, I'm for sure enjoying the programming side, the machine learning, hands-on keyboard, but like, why computer vision? Like, what turned you on there? That's really interesting to me.
Science fair in high school. It was one of my science projects. So my dad, is an engineer. And so he had been working on computer vision, image processing back in the day, image processing projects. And so one of my science fair projects was related to image processing. And that's really cool. It's like, it's a way to do technical work. It's a way to do computer work, but be involved in something visual, be involved in imagery, it's almost like it's also being involved in like a treasure hunt. Like, you've got this image, figure out something about it, or find something in it, or make it look better. It's so strange to say, but it's slightly artistic, just slightly, just 5% artistic, or pick a word, and then has all this core STEM work behind it. So I've always liked the computer vision work. And so for the, as I was mentioning, for my first half of my Navy career, we were building automatic target recognition systems for all of these satellite systems. We were detecting anything on the ocean surface, even detecting qualities of the ocean surface. And then I did a couple side projects where we would detect and track wildfires. So, San Diego, we have all sorts of wildfire issues, Southern California. So we were doing all sorts of detection, tracking, and mapping of wildfire containment. Or you can map and understand, vegetation quality to predict wildfires. For a while there, you can also look at vegetation to see what type of plants are growing. So, for example, if you're a law enforcement and you're looking for a particular type of plant growing somewhere, you could potentially look for it. Also, there's, depending on what type of imagery you're working with, there's ways to detect chemicals in the air. So, for example, after 9/11, they would fly airplanes over New York City with sensors on them to figure out what sort of chemicals were coming out of the World Trade Center to see if there were bad chemicals or had they dispersed or how prevalent were they. So there's just so many cool things, it's like a treasure hunt. It's like, what are you going to find today? What type of imagery are you going to work on today? It's so cool. I love it.
That is super cool.
That is really,
that's exciting.
yeah. So along those same lines, then, what would you say is the coolest, what you would consider the coolest project that you got to work on, either whether it was with the Navy, and I'm sure you had some crazy, top secret clearance and all of this stuff. So whatever you can share, but it could be from your time at the Navy or even just most recently in your last 2 years at AWS. What's that one thing you're like, that thing was really badass and was a lot of fun?
Well, the one thing I can't talk about, but what's interesting is what my group was doing is we were trying to use, there's commercial imagery, like the stuff you see on Google Earth, and then there's classified imagery. We were always trying to figure out how to use commercial imagery to do more, to get more out of it, or to get more coverage, or I don't know. So a lot of times what we would do is we build a capability that works one way on the classified sensors and then worked on the commercial stuff as well. So because we were working on those commercial sensors, we got to travel a lot to foreign countries to teach them how to do this type of work or how to use these sensors. Like, for example, we would travel to Ghana and Nigeria and we went to South America a bunch. I went over to Singapore a bunch. And what we were doing is we were working with these foreign countries it's called capacity building. It's teaching them how to use this type of technology to guard their waters or monitor their fishing. Fun story. I got to hang out with the president of Iceland. Not why I would love to go to Iceland one day, but I hung out like we were standing in a circle, touching arms, hanging out with the president of Iceland at a conference that 30 people were at the Google headquarters, oceans, and monitoring oceans. So I hung out with the president of Iceland for one day, and we talked about monitoring illegal fishing and monitoring ship traffic. So it was we just had the opportunity to work on so many different crazy things in the Navy and go so many directions with it. And my team we were just really into innovative technology, whether that was trying to innovate using satellite imagery or trying to innovate down the line, moving computer vision into augmented reality and virtual reality and innovating with immersive technology. And so I liked how many different places I could go and all the things I could explore in the Navy and all the doors that it opened. But now I come here, I've only been at AWS for 2 years, but I realized we now build prototypes for customers. So it's very similar because now, I might have a customer in healthcare, and then the next day I might have a customer in media and entertainment, and then the next day I might have a customer in, a different industry. So we get to do it similarly here as well. But I've only done it for 2 years. So I'm still seeing where this path is going to go.
That is just so crazy. I want to hear all of the classified things that you worked on. Like that,
Okay,
like, it's
that's
totally fine. You can tell us. We won't tell anybody. But like that's, I recently listened to a podcast. I really like the Lex Friedman podcast, and he interviewed this ex, I'm gonna get this all messed up. It wasn't the CIA, but it was some really close role to the president, and he was talking about the processes for when the president has to basically click like the nuclear weapons button, and like all of the people that are involved and the near misses. And
oh
he was
no.
like, but I think it was like on WikiLeaks and stuff, so he was able to talk about it. But it's just like that stuff is just so crazy to me. It's so fascinating. But
But it's definitely a different world. And, you know, I've had to meet a lot of people too. We met Rick Schmidt, the CEO of Alphabet,
oh,
Secretary of Defense. I've briefed one of the prior secretaries of defense, Secretary of the Navy. You know, we just had, because I had a lab with like a demo space. It's very much like the Builder Studio, but for the Navy, for AR and VR. And so because I had such a big, popular, innovative lab, we had lots of visitors coming through. So we got lots of big names coming through. So I got to brief all these people all the time. It's great. It's very, very interesting.
So you mentioned that you get to build prototypes for customers now with the PACE team that you lead. And I'm just curious, like, how does a customer come about engaging with your team to figure out, yeah, I need some prototyping support, or I have
Yes,
this idea, but I don't know how to build it, or whatever it may be.
usually, primarily, it's with their account manager. So their account manager is working with them, their account SA is working with them, you know, exploring concepts or exploring use cases, and then they realize that they're stuck or that their customer really wants to kind of see if this use case is promising, but they don't have the resources to do it themselves. And so typically what we prototype is 6 to 8 week build times. So the entire prototype engagement is a couple few months, but the build time is 6 to 8 weeks. So we carve out, you know, whatever their use case is or the thing they want to explore, we'll carve out a small piece of that. We'll do it for them. We'll do it with them. We, you know, we work on a sprint cycle. We have lots of back and forth with the customer, weekly meetings with them. We do a whole working backwards with them to make sure that we've got the plan and that we know what they really want and what's really going to check mark those boxes. And then we start building it, you know, with them by our side.
So I have a couple of follow-up questions. I think most of your team, I would liken them to like maybe SDEs, like software development engineers. So like heavy coders, heavy programmers, very language heavy in writing. Are they using Amazon Q to improve their productivity for writing code?
Of course.
Are
Yeah.
they?
We leverage Bedrock and all of our new Amazon generative AI services quite a bit. I do it too. Like I'm not in there coding every day, but like I've used Bedrock to improve things I'm writing or help me write something or help me research something. I use a lot for artwork that I need. We have this really cool tool that another guy on a different team built. It's called the Storyteller tool. So we can input some information about a prototype that we worked on, and it will generate a LinkedIn post, you know, the LinkedIn, the right type of content, some emojis, the contact us email address, the right hashtags. So it'll generate the whole blurb and it's fine tuned to be, you know, just this amount of peppy, but this amount of technical. So it's super fine tuned. And then it also generates an image with appropriate branding on it. And then we can cut and paste those two straight into LinkedIn. And we put a disclaimer on it that this was written by, you know, such and such model using Bedrock. And it helps us bang these things out. And so I love it. I think generative AI is so cool. I use it all the time.
Do you feel like that's going to be a trend that we need to adopt in the future? Is like if a company uses any type of model to produce artwork or to produce content that it needs to be disclosed?
I don't know. I personally disclose it when I'm doing something personal. on LinkedIn or wherever, I disclose it because I feel that way personally. And then at work for my team and the broader team, I feel strongly that we need to disclose it because it does two things. One, it keeps us honest, keeps everything truthful, up and up, but also it shows the capability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, this person generated this thing very easily and it sounds great. And so we're trying to use it. We're seeing how it works to write longer articles, technical articles. Of course, we'll disclaim it if we do. Different types of artwork, different types of communication. I just see it as this tool, and you can use it as much or as little as you want. Like sometimes I'll write something and I just feed it into Bedrock, and I'll just say, make this sound 10%, 10% more exciting, or just check my grammar, or write this at an 8th grade level, or write this at a 12th grade level, just improving what I've already written. I'm so excited. My next career is going to be all in generative AI. Yeah. I know. Don't know what it is. Might be at AWS.
Right.
But all the new Gen AI.
It's funny because this reminds me of the when you're texting someone and now it has the prompts at the bottom. So it like, thanks. It gives you a couple options. At least it does on Android, like thanks with an exclamation point or just the thumbs up or nice or like whatever it may be. When I'm texting someone, actually, I'll just say it. Like if I'm texting my husband and I'll ask him something and then he'll respond, I know when he's using that, I'm like, don't use the auto-generated replies on me, because it'll be something he will never say, like, that's great, exclamation point. But like that doesn't even really match. I'm like, I know what you're. So it just kind of reminded me when you're talking about disclosing is, we use it a lot on Technogals. We use it sometimes for posting. We definitely use it for images. We use Dolly sometimes. And sometimes we'll give credit that where we got it, but I don't know if we disclose every time. And it's not just we don't want people to know that, this other thing behind the scenes is doing the work, but more so it's not really something that's front of mind, but maybe it should be that every time we are using something like that there is some sort of disclosure, heads up, like we had some assistance in this space, and that's okay. It's now a very normal practice of how people operate at work and in their personal lives. But
and I figure probably in 6 months it'll be so commonplace that you won't need to disclose it. But again, I feel personally I want to disclose it because I want to show people that a person who doesn't code nowadays can just easily do this stuff.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. So when we first started talking with you, Heidi, we were kind of brainstorming, like, we want you on the podcast, like your background and the stuff that you do with Pace is so super interesting that, the listeners, we think will really enjoy this. But what other topics are you passionate about, and what maybe you would want to bring to the show? And one of the things that you said is, around cognitive load. So with that, tell us what's going on. Like, what are your thoughts on cognitive load, the context switching? Like, lay it on us.
Well, I think about cognitive load a lot. And I think probably most people nowadays, we all have busy lives, right? I think people realize that they have some level of cognitive load going on, but they don't think about it. But I think about it a lot. And it's because I feel like, like right now, my bathroom's being remodeled right outside this door. I've got the bathroom remodel going on. I've got to schedule this. I've got to order these groceries because I order everything online, right? Order these groceries, go to this doctor, schedule that doctor. And I always think, I've got like a full-time job at home, and then I've got a full-time job and then some at work. Right. And it's like, I always wonder if I wasn't thinking about home and dealing with home and, had all these other responsibilities, like how much better would I be at work? How much more could I accomplish? And is that even like, should I even be comparing and contrasting and thinking about that? Is that not fair to think about that? But I know like everybody's cognitive load at home is different, yet we're all judged the same way at work. Mm-hmm. And I always say, I've always told my husband that the day someone invents a household AI system that helps you run your house and your personal life is that's the moneymaker, at least for me. Because like, how many times have you all been in the shower and you think, yeah, I need to order trash bags, or buy trash bags, and by the time you get out of the shower, it's gone.
Should go.
And like, and then you don't have that item, and you run out of trash bags. I don't know what it is, right? And it's like I need a household AI that I'm in the shower and I can say trash bags, and it'll put it on my list. And then as I'm walking out the door one day, it'll remind me, "Hey Heidi, you gotta remember to go buy such and such. Or you gotta remember to do this." So like it's like when I'm in the kitchen, it reminds me of kitchen things. When I'm in the bedroom, it reminds me of bedroom things. When I'm walking out the door, it reminds me of outdoor things. When I'm sitting quietly with my phone next to me, it reminds me of telephone things. I wish there were better tools to help run our busy lives. And then what impact does that have on work? And then can I use those tools at work too to run my busy work? Because I swear everything I do is post-it notes. I just have paper and post-it notes. We're all, right? We're all like at these super high-tech companies, yet tools just aren't 100% what we need. Like, I don't know. Like, I've tried OneNote. I've tried the virtual stickies on my desktop. I've tried using Outlook to ping me on things. And like, nothing is 100%. So I just want fabulous AI household life tools that just organize everything. And I want to drop my either of my household load or my workload down. I'm sorry, that was a rant. But that's how I feel.
So I think it's really interesting though, because you started out with this statement by saying, if I didn't have the bathroom or the grocery shopping or whatever things you needed to order, how much more productive could I be at work or can I get done? But I almost wonder the flip. Because I personally feel like I run a marathon every day. And sometimes I sit at this desk and I'm like, you've been sitting here for 6 hours. And sometimes I even get annoyed if I drink too much water and I'm like, oh, I have to pee again. I'm going to break my concentration and I got to get restarted and I'm going to be super annoyed. Right? Small things like that. But it's like, because at the end of the day, I feel like, wow, I'm super exhausted. And now I have to go home, or not even go home. I work from home, but I got to put on my best mom self and make dinner and then play outside with them because those are important too. But it's almost like you're saying, like, if I didn't have these things at work, like how much, like how could, or if I didn't have these things at home, how much more could I get done at work? Where I sometimes feel the opposite. Like I should be showing up in the evening for my children the most, but sometimes work consumes all my energy. And then I feel mom guilt and super sad on the flip side where I just feel so tired that I don't have the energy to engage on the family level. And so I think it's interesting that you're like, how much more can I get done at work? Where I'm like, I kind of want to flip it. Like if work felt more organized and a little less chaotic, like how much more could I invest with my children and truly be present instead of being like, oh, now I got to send that email tomorrow too. I forgot about it. And those types of things.
I wonder if it's where your guilt stems from. I have work guilt. You have mom guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. But that is interesting.
Because I always feel like at work, there's always a new requirement, always a new goal, always a new task, and it's always asked. And so I always feel like well, it's 4:45. I gotta stop and make dinner, or whatever it is, right? Or I've got noise in the background. I can't do this, and so I think I always have work guilt.
Yeah. What do you think is the difference between why someone might, and this is obviously very opinionated and theoretical, so I'm not expecting this to be based on any, but besides just your opinion, which is why you're our guest today. But like, why do you think someone might have mom guilt versus like work guilt? Or maybe we should remove it from moms, but like parental guilt.
Household, personal business guilt.
Guilt, yeah.
Tracy, what sort of guilt do you have?
I don't know that I didn't take my dogs for a walk today and they're looking at me like I'm a horrible dog mom. No, I think it's probably because I don't have kids in the house. It's probably more on the work side. Like I could be doing more. I could be doing better. And we've talked about this in a previous episode, like, or I feel like I should be further along in my career based on all of the things that I've done so far. But the cognitive load, I mean, it's still there. Like all the things that you just described. And, before we hit record, we were talking about Mother's Day. Like on top of all of the stuff, then you're planning the weekend for Mother's Day. Like I'm hosting family here and I'm so excited. And I'm signing up to do a Mother's Day brunch. So we're going to have like a mimosa bar and I'm going to make some fun stuff. But then it's like, okay, so I still got work. Friday's super busy. I need to make my Walmart order. And then I need to go to, I'm going to get maybe some little gifts. So then I got to go like get that and get that all organized. And then I got to get the house ready for people to spend the weekend here. And then we leave for Vegas on Monday. So then I'm like, oh, well, I got to make sure we have everything that we need for that. But I would say mine, right, wrong, or indifferent, I probably err on the side of like, I feel like I should be doing more. But then it's a vicious cycle. Alicia and I were talking about this the other day of like, I feel like I should be doing more, but then I feel like disappointed in myself that I'm disappointed in myself. I'm like, no, you shouldn't be doing more. Like you're doing as much as you can and you're doing the best you can. I don't know. It's this weird complex.
I wonder too, now that I think about it, I wonder if I jump back and forth. Like work is really heavy right now. And I've actually talked briefly about cognitive load with my boss. And so maybe I'm just feeling more guilty about work, but I know there are times where I feel guilty about home related stuff. Like, especially when my daughter, she asked me the other day, she says, Mama, when are you going to come to school and read to my class? I thought, okay, I'll figure that out too. So maybe it's just, I'm in work mode right now and then I'll jump to home mode.
Yeah. How do you think?
Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, you go next. How do you think employers can support employees through this like cognitive load burden?
Well, firmly believe in the 4-day work week because my 20 years with the Navy, we did the 5-4-9 schedule. So 1 week we'd work the 5 full days, and then the next week we'd work 4 days. So every 2 weeks you'd get 1 Friday off.
Oh.
And in addition to that, with government service, I mean, you get every holiday off. I got tons and tons of annual leave, which is vacation leave, and then I got a separate sick leave bank. I had hundreds and hundreds of hours to take off whenever I needed to, and I was getting every other Friday off. When you have that Friday off, all your store runs, all of your errands, you schedule all your appointments that day, right? And it would just be nice to have 1 day every so often to just schedule everything and not have it count against your vacation time, which you should be using to, check out. And so, like, I don't know about your org, but our org implemented the wellness days. Did you guys have the wellness days? And so, like, I think that's great. And I encourage my guys to use their wellness days. And for people who don't know, it's just this day. And you can take them every few months. It's just a random day. You tell your boss you're not coming in and you clear your schedule, right? And you're supposed to do, meditation or massage or health or thinking or whatever it is, right? Whatever will give you energy. But like, I can't find where to schedule on my calendar those wellness days. And like, that's ticking me off right now. It's like, I can't miss that day. And I can't miss that day. So I was thinking to myself, well, my afternoons are usually less busy because of my time zone. And so I thought maybe I should take half day wellness days and then just get all my stuff done. But see, here I am using my wellness day to like run my errands or clean out my closet or I don't know.
What do you think, Alicia? What can employers do outside of wellness days to help with this?
That's a good question because I think it's really tough, but I think it's really about perspective, and I'm guilty of this. So like, I do the best I can at my job, and especially as a people leader, I really put a lot of energy in making sure that they feel supported, recognized, that they have like the career development plan, that I understand who they are as people first, and workers second. And that if you need to step away for an emergency, it is what it is. Like you have enough deposits, so to speak, into the bank that if you have like these emergencies that happen, like you can take time away and do what you need to do to. And I also think that we pretty accountable people. But I think perspective is that we do really cool work, but it's okay to have a life outside of here as well. And that's an important thing that I think is just really like you have to constantly like self-talk you into that mentality though. And myself included. I'm like, I'm taking next Friday off because I'm going to the zoo with my son for his last field trip with his school. And it's like I could easily, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be 8 hours. Like I'm not gonna be able to get them. Like time with my son's a little bit more important. But you have to kind of like constantly like bring yourself back into that. I'm also, I mean, there's tons of research about the cognitive load is still disproportionate on women as far as ordering groceries, knowing who the doctors are, knowing their teacher's name, getting sure that your teacher gets a gift for Teachers Appreciation Day. I don't know a lot of men that are doing that in their household and their family. Well, I think that the better, more so than work, if we just empower women more so to not like ask for help, but say like, this is the household expectations. You're not helping me do chores. You are doing chores because you live here. And like just reframing how that's even positioned is probably more important than what an employer can do, is supporting women at the household level.
I will tell you, it's Teacher Appreciation Week at school this week, and I gave myself permission to not.
Yeah. And that's completely okay too, right? Yeah.
I said, it's just not going to happen this time.
Yeah. And that's got to be acceptable because like everyone else, I mean, you've got to understand it. And I think that's how you start to remove your cognitive load, is by saying, here are the things I'm going to prioritize. And here are the things I'm just like woo-sawing. And it's just like, it's going to be like, I'll deal with that next year. And that's got to be how we make it more socially. Like we got to normalize that. Normalize not doing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to like what Heidi said about the flip-flopping of the guilt, right? Like it bears its ugly head in some of these areas. Like maybe it's Teacher Appreciation Week, maybe it's the household, maybe it's at work this time. But Alicia, I love the call out of how do we, it's on both fronts. It can't just be the employer. It has to be on the home side too for it to get better.
Yeah.
Man.
I think I'm pretty type A. And so sometimes I'm my own worst enemy because I know that I'll do it exactly how I want it. And so I won't ask for help. Someone like vacuumed the floor the other day. And I was like, oof, I would have wanted all like the lines to go in the same way. But some kid came in here and went like, I was like, wow, I don't know why you would do that. It's so inefficient, but whatever.
That is so funny.
Yeah. And so like I'm my own worst enemy. So like that's my own fault for having like increasing my cognitive load because I want the vacuum stripes in the certain order. And so at that point in time, I was just like, you know what, you just got to like be thankful that they vacuumed the stupid carpet and move on with your life.
Yeah. That's funny. It's little things.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're wrapping up on time here, but Heidi, thank you so much for joining us. This was so fun to have you on the podcast, and hopefully maybe you'll join us again in the future. We would love to have you back.
I would love to. It sounds fun.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You got to do your thing. I'm finger gun lady. Alicia, you're
right. You have to cue the outro music. That's right. Thanks, everybody.